So, after some time had passed since Mizuki's release, a new 4-star weapon can now be obtained from the Enchanted Tales event, and it's a polearm that has nothing to do with her, but instead, it could potentially be good for some characters that I will talk about and even speculate a little, but at the same time, I will also investigate the weapon's pros and cons. Although, I will say this, it's actually one of the better event weapons, but there's a catch. Okay, so the first thing you'll probably notice is the cute and creepy yokai darting his eye around back and forth. He's probably a distant cousin of this umbrella sword you could obtain from an Inazuma event some time ago. Wait, it's been 2 years already? Jeez, time flies really fast, huh? Anyway, this free 4-star polearm called, Tamayuratei no Ohanashi? Yeah, let's just call it the Lantern Polearm. Well, this weapon has pretty decent stats. High base attack of 565, and there's also 30.6% energy recharge from the substat. However, the most interesting part about it is the passive. When the character uses their skill, they will gain 20% attack, and movement speed will be increased by 10% for 10 seconds. So, very easy to trigger and doesn't require you to hit a target. And as far as I'm aware, this is a 7th weapon which can increase movement speed, but it's actually the first polearm which can do it. With that being said, this weapon is quite versatile, since it provides a bunch of attack and energy recharge. Also, keep in mind, due to me recording this video when the event just recently kicked off, I only have this weapon at R1, but when fully refined, we can see from the refinement screen, it will eventually boost attack by 40%, which is pretty nice. And I actually have a way to simulate this final refinement, so I'll be able to fully showcase the weapon in just a moment. But I know what you're thinking, who can actually utilize this weapon? Well, the reality is, this polearm could be used by many, although the big question is, how effective it's actually going to be, since the polearm users are a bit tricky in Genshin, and you'll see why soon. Anyway, let's talk about the potential candidates in this next part. But first, this video is brought to you by Aether Gazer, a 3D sci-fi action RPG, which is now celebrating its 3.4 update, and this includes the long-awaited summer event, so don't miss out on it. And right now, you can pull for the new unit Selene, Goddess of the Moon. I've been having so much fun with her, and she's got this really interesting mechanic where she can switch between new moon and full moon mode, so the battles feel really immersive. And as you can see, I am fighting seamlessly thanks to the upgraded PC controls, which is great if I want to take a break from the mobile version. But if that's not enough, this update also introduces new stories, which includes Selene herself, new areas like Harbor Square, new enemies, and more. Plus, there's some spicy summer event gameplay too, so don't miss out on those limited rewards. You can also obtain Selene's alternate skin, which looks absolutely gorgeous, and in addition, Izanami, who will be returning, you'll be able to obtain her newest skin as well. So whether you're new or played the game before, make sure to check out this massive update, download Aether Gazer by using my link in the description, and help support my channel. So, with the list of suspects filtered in the character archive by polearm weapon type, we can immediately cross out some of these units, just because they don't really care about the attack boosting the weapon provides, and some of their roles just don't require damage anyway. Now, the first one that comes to mind, and who will be the perfect test subject, is going to be Xiangling. One of the biggest downsides when playing this chef is that she has some serious energy issues, hence why majority of her teams always includes Benny Boy to fix those energy problems. And so, the energy recharge the event weapon provides is actually quite relevant for her. Not just because she will gain more energy, but also most people run her with Emblem Set, which allows ER stat to boost burst damage. However, one of the most popular weapon options she has is the Catch. And if we compare it side by side with the R1 Lantern Polearm, we can see the event weapon deals less damage than the Catch, which is about 6%. Although, to be fair, there's an abundant amount of attack boosting that Xiangling gains, which includes Benny's Burst, Noblesse Buff, and Pyro Resonance. So the attack that she gains from the event weapon is not as impactful. And so now, if we compare these weapons side by side without any attack buffs, we can see the damage difference becomes extremely minuscule, and the Catch deals about 0.002% more damage. Now, I also mentioned it's possible to simulate the final refinement level of this weapon, and it's thanks to the Millilith set. Since it boosts all units' attack by 20%, it's exactly the same kind of boost the event weapon provides. So 20% attack coming from the event weapon, and 20% for Millilith set. That's the same 40% you would get from the final refinement. We could also just see if we multiply her current base attack by 0.2 and add the result twice, we end up with the same number from calcs as shown in the stats menu. So when comparing the weapons now, since Kachina is boosting us with the Millilith set, we can see the Lantern Polearm ends up dealing about 1% more damage. However, that's when all the other usual attack buffs are active when playing with Benny. But without him, this weapon actually ends up dealing about 10% more damage, damage, with the previous condition that there are no other attack buffs active. So, in a nutshell, if you're playing Xiangling without Benny Boy, or at least if there are no other active strong attack buffs in the team, this event weapon is pretty good. But there is one extremely important thing we're missing out on. The catch does provide 12% critical rate to the burst, and while this cannot be seen in regular damage showcases, on average, this actually makes the catch quite better than the event weapon, because critical rate is extremely important, and it's quite hard to build on Xiangling. Not to mention the fact, it also gives a bit more ER, which for Xiangling, you need a lot of it, so any extra amount of it really helps. Still, if you do end up with really good critical rate substats, and you haven't unlocked the catch, or you don't want to do all the fishing, or perhaps the catch is already on Raiden Shogun and you have no other good options, then yeah, this event weapon, with all things considered, is pretty strong on Xiangling. Still, one thing to keep in mind about this weapon, the energy recharge coming from the substat is quite relevant for a lot of polearm users because the majority of them do rely on their burst, like Xiangling, Xiao, Raiden Shogun, Rosaria, Toma, Yunjin, Shenhe, Sino, Mika, and even Emily. But does that mean this weapon is great for all of them? Not really. For example, for Xiao enthusiasts, you all know the biggest problem that needs to be solved for him is the energy. So the new event weapon not only looks quite good on him, but it also provides relevant stats. On the other hand, Toma doesn't care much about attack, unless you're one of those DPS Toma players, then bless you. But then when it comes to Raiden Shogun, in fact, her situation is very similar to Xiangling's, and the testing I've showcased, pretty much same things could be said for Raiden. Now, as for Shenhe, it's gonna be like a budget engulfing lightning, since she does really want energy recharge, and she does gain quite a lot of attack from this event weapon, so it's a good option as well, although Favonius Lance is still considered by many her best 4-star option. And then we have Sino. While he really prefers Elemental Mastery, the ER substat for him when he's the only Electro unit in the team will be valuable, and the high attack he will gain will still be useful, but it's not gonna be a super good 4-star option for him. And finally, Emily, this is actually a nice weapon for her since she does like to have high amount of attack for her passive to boost her damage, and with this weapon, she can almost reach the attack cap she needs. But I'd say overall, this Lantern Polearm isn't going to be anyone's best free-to-play option, but it's also not that far behind some of the best 4-star polearms. And because of the good generic stats it provides, both from the substat and passive, it ends up being a pretty versatile option for a lot of units, especially if you cannot equip them with their best 4-star option. Still, usually event weapons are designed for some kind of a specific unit, so who might that be? Look, it's pretty obvious I cannot go into the leaks or dreams territory, but let's say for example, if there is going to be a future polearm user who could benefit from the whole passive, including the movement speed buff it provides, then yeah, this is going to be a pretty serious weapon option for them. Still, we have to remember that Favonius Lance exists, and unlike other Favonius weapons, the polearm version has the highest base attack, which, I don't know, just stating it might be important if you know what I mean. And to top it off, the insanely valuable passive which generates particles has been and will most likely always remain to be super valuable for a ton of team comps, since the majority of time, for Abyss challenges, you do need to have good uptime on bursts. But we'll see how this event weapon will fare against something like Favonius Lance in the future. And as always, the Lantern Polearm is still overall a great weapon for a lot of units. Not the greatest of all 4-stars, but it's definitely not horrible. And who knows, it could become one of the best options for a future unit. Anyway, hope you found this video interesting or useful, and as always, I'd really appreciate it if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and see you very soon.